I've decided to analyze who I believe is an underrated character in Gloria Naylor's Mama Day. Her name is Mrs. Jackson, and she was in charge of the Wallace P. Andrews Shelter for Boys, where George Andrews, the romantic partner of our main protagonist Ophelia or Coco Day, grew up. It's important to note that she never interacts with any characters during the main timeline of the story, and she is only mentioned when George recalls his childhood growing up at her shelter. As such, this analysis is, and only can be, performed with what we know about her from his point of view. As such, let's take a look at what she teaches the boys under her care. The most recurring phrase we hear from Mrs. Jackson is, "Only the present has potential, sir." Whenever she punished the boys, each punishment was tailored to the boy, with George's having been her taking his books from him. George believes this to have been a controlled method of punishment that said to each boy that the present is themselves. From an outside perspective, I could see this working to instill a strong sense of self-accountability in those under her care. Mrs. Jackson, as we quickly learned, had little if any care for the emotional states of the boys. Their rage, hurts, and disappointments didn't matter to her at all, as people would not care in the real world, and they may as well start learning as such in her shelter. Less about mentality and emotions, Mrs. Jackson gave the boys several duties I believe were given with the intention of making them independent, which include growing and canning food, making furniture, painting dorms, and sewing curtains and bedspreads. Mrs. Jackson was sternly objective in raising the boys at her shelter to be what she believed was the best they could be, and I find her vision very admirable.